most people hear quantum shifting, they imagine something impossible, something reserved for spiritual gurus or people who've spent decades meditating in caves. They think it requires complex rituals, secret knowledge, or years of disciplined practice. But what if that belief is exactly what's keeping you stuck? Here's the truth nobody wants you to know. Quantum shifting isn't magic. It's not complicated. It's actually easier than you've been conditioned to believe. The only reason it feels hard is because you've been taught that transformation requires struggle. But what if the struggle itself is the block? This video will reveal why ease, not effort, is the key to collapsing new realities. You'll discover the simple science behind quantum collapse, why your addiction to the old self keeps you trapped, and the 3 practices that make shifting feel natural instead of forced. By the end, you'll never look at manifestation the same way again.
When most people hear the phrase quantum shifting, their mind instantly paints it as something impossible, something mystical, something reserved for enlightened masters who've transcended normal human limitations. They imagine elaborate rituals performed under the stars, ancient words whispered in secret languages, endless years of training just to touch realities beyond what's visible. That belief, that idea that shifting realities must be complicated, is the very illusion keeping them locked in the same patterns over and over again. The paradox is beautifully simple. Quantum shifting is not magic, and it's not beyond you. It's natural, it's mechanical, and it's easier than you've been taught to believe. The only reason it feels so difficult is because you've been conditioned to think that transformation must involve struggle, that change must hurt, that growth must be painful. But what if the struggle is actually the block, not the process itself? Our culture loves to worship effort. We're told from childhood that if something is valuable, it must be earned through blood, sweat, and resistance. Success must be hard-won. Change must be grueling. Progress must come with sacrifice. And when people approach manifestation with that mindset embedded in their nervous system, they naturally expect shifting to require immense effort too. They carry this belief into every single practice. Hours of affirmations repeated until their throat goes dry, forcing visualizations when their mind resists, pushing against their own doubts like they're trying to move a boulder uphill, fighting with themselves, battling their own resistance, exhausting themselves in the name of transformation. Yet quantum shifting is not about effort at all. It's about alignment, and alignment, unlike struggle, doesn't require strain. Alignment is like a key sliding smoothly into a lock. It doesn't demand force. It demands precision, the right shape, the right frequency, the right resonance. Physics reveals this truth in its most basic principles. Before observation, particles exist in a state called superposition, infinite possibilities, hovering as waves of pure potential. When observed, the wave collapses into one specific outcome. That collapse is instantaneous. It doesn't strain. It doesn't wrestle with itself. It doesn't fight to become real. It simply is. The wave doesn't work harder to become a particle. It doesn't struggle into existence. It responds instantly to the conditions of observation. The right conditions create the collapse automatically. No effort. No force, just natural response. Likewise, you don't need to grind your way into a new reality. You simply need to meet the condition of coherence, and collapse happens naturally. The field responds. Reality shifts. Not because you pushed it, but because you matched it. The illusion of difficulty comes from trying to force what's meant to flow. Here's the incomplete puzzle that most people never see. If shifting is actually this simple, why does it feel so impossible for so many? The answer is not in the mechanics. The mechanics are straightforward. The hard part is that people are addicted to their old identities, addicted to rehearsing the same emotions every morning, addicted to the narrative that says, "This is just who I am." That addiction makes the new state feel unreachable, not because it's complicated, but because the old state feels safer. Familiar suffering feels more comfortable than unfamiliar freedom. And so the brain convinces you that change must be hard because anything outside the known feels dangerous to your nervous system. In truth, it's not dangerous. It's simply unfamiliar. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you stopped yourself from stepping into something greater because the voice inside your head said, "It can't be that easy"? That voice is not wisdom. It's fear disguised as logic. It's your nervous system clinging desperately to what it already knows, because the known feels predictable, and the predictable feels safe. Neuroscience shows us that the brain is wired for efficiency. It prefers to repeat old circuits rather than build new ones, because repetition consumes less energy. The brain wants to conserve resources. It wants to stay in patterns it's already mapped. But energy efficiency is not the same as truth. Just because the old self feels easier to inhabit doesn't mean it's your only option. Shifting is easier than you think, because once you truly commit to embodying the new, your brain begins to rewire almost immediately. Neuroplasticity kicks in. New pathways form, old ones weaken. The difficulty was never in the collapse itself. It was in your resistance to letting go of the old. Here's the pattern interrupt that changes everything. Struggle is not proof of progress. In fact, struggle is often proof of misalignment. When you're pushing, forcing, grinding against yourself, you're actually confirming that the reality you want is far away. You're rehearsing separation instead of embodying closeness. You're broadcasting distance, not arrival. But when you relax into coherence, when your thoughts, emotions, and body all agree on the same frequency, you collapse the desired reality instantly, with no resistance, no battle, no exhausting fight. What if it was never about fighting harder, but about allowing more deeply? Consider the way water flows. A river doesn't strain to reach the ocean. It doesn't agonize over every bend in its path. It doesn't question whether it's doing it right. It simply follows the current, and gravity does the rest. The river trusts the flow. Quantum shifting is exactly the same. The field is already moving. Potential is already infinite. Collapse is already natural. You don't need to create the river. You only need to stop building dams made of doubt and resistance. The illusion of difficulty is the dam. The shift itself is the current, and the current was always there, waiting for you to stop blocking it. And here's the curiosity loop to carry forward. If the process is this natural, this effortless, why have you been convinced it's so hard? Who benefits from you believing change requires struggle? What systems, what beliefs, what voices have told you that ease means you're not trying hard enough? What happens when you finally accept that the door has always been unlocked and all you had to do was push it gently open? This question lingers, not as a riddle to solve, but as an invitation to explore, because the moment you stop believing the lie of difficulty, you step into the truth of collapse. And when that truth takes root in your nervous system, reality shifts in ways that feel less like a fight and more like remembering what was always yours. At first glance, quantum shifting may sound abstract, even mysterious, but the truth is that its foundation rests on some of the most studied principles in modern physics. The universe itself is structured around possibility. At the subatomic level, particles are not fixed objects moving through empty space. They're waves of probability existing in countless states simultaneously. This condition is called superposition. A single electron, for example, is not here or there until observed. It's here and there and everywhere in between, in all potential locations at once, until something collapses that potential into one outcome. This is the mechanism of reality itself. Infinite possibility narrowed into actuality through collapse. Now consider what this means for you. Your life is not a rigid, predetermined line stretching from birth to death. It's a field of infinite versions of you, all existing in superposition right now. Wealthy and struggling, free and stuck, loved and lonely, healthy and sick, thriving and surviving. These are not fantasies, they're probabilities. And just as particles collapse into specific outcomes when observed, your consciousness collapses one of these versions into the life you're currently living. This is why shifting realities is not magic. It's physics expressed through biology and awareness. You are the observer, and your body is the measuring device through which the collapse happens. Neuroscience helps us bridge the gap between physics and lived experience. When neurons fire together repeatedly, they wire together. They form circuits that become the brain's preferred pathways. Over time, these circuits stabilize into what we call habits, beliefs, and identity. If your nervous system is wired to expect disappointment, your brain automatically filters reality through that lens. It collapses probabilities that match disappointment. If your circuits are rewired toward trust, gratitude, and abundance, your brain filters for opportunities and collapses realities aligned with expansion. The science is clear. Your perception is not passive. It's an active mechanism that selects which version of reality crystallizes into your experience. But here lies the incomplete puzzle. If the mechanics of collapse are so universal, so constant, why do most people continue to experience the same struggles year after year? Why does nothing seem to change even when they desperately want it to? The answer is coherence, or rather, the lack of it. The quantum field does not respond to fragmented signals. If your thoughts say one thing, your emotions say another, and your body says something else entirely, the signal you broadcast is static, noise, confusion, and the collapse defaults to the strongest, most familiar frequency, usually the one tied to old emotions and old identities that have been running on autopilot for years. This is why so many people feel trapped even while visualizing new realities. Their biology is collapsing in the past, not the future. Their nervous system is tuned to the old frequency, and no amount of mental visualization can override what the body is broadcasting emotionally. Here's the pattern interrupt you need to understand. You are not failing to manifest. You're manifesting constantly. Every single thought, every emotion, every state of being is collapsing a version of reality right now. The problem is not whether collapse happens. It always does. Every moment of every day. The real question is whether you're collapsing deliberately or unconsciously. When you leave it unconscious, your nervous system recycles the old. It collapses the same story again and again, because that's the circuit that's been reinforced. But when you cultivate coherence, aligning thought, feeling, and body into one unified signal, you send a clear message into the field, and the field has no choice but to respond. Heart coherence research confirms this beautifully. When the rhythm of the heart becomes smooth and ordered, brain waves synchronize, the nervous system regulates, and the body shifts from survival mode into creation mode. In this state, the electromagnetic field you generate expands outward. It radiates coherence into the space around you. That signal interacts with the quantum field, and it collapses probabilities into alignment with your embodied state. You don't force this collapse, you allow it. Because coherence is the natural language the field responds to. The science of shifting is not about control, it's about consistency. Consider how this plays out in everyday life. Two people walk into the same room. One is anxious, mentally rehearsing old fears. The other is calm, radiating stability from their core. Though both experience the identical environment, their bodies collapse different realities within it. The anxious person notices threats, judgments, reasons to confirm their fear. The calm person perceives opportunities, openness, pathways forward. The external environment is identical, yet their internal coherence collapses entirely different experiences. This is the essence of quantum shifting. It's not about changing the external world first. It's about collapsing a different version of reality within the same environment, and that happens through coherence. In the comments right now, drop one word that captures the energy you're choosing to carry forward. Maybe it's alignment. Maybe it's ease. Maybe it's power. Maybe it's something uniquely yours. Let that word be a small but profound declaration, a signal you send not just into this space, but into the quantum field itself. And here's the curiosity loop you must hold. If shifting is as simple as achieving coherence, what keeps you from living in that state more often? The answer is not complexity, it's habit. You're accustomed to incoherence. You're accustomed to believing that effort equals results, that struggle equals proof, that the old story is safer than the new one. But what happens when you train your nervous system to prefer coherence instead? What happens when the default state of your biology becomes alignment, not survival? The science suggests something remarkable. Shifting becomes effortless because collapse is no longer random, it's chosen. If quantum shifting is not magic, and if science confirms it's simpler than we think, then why does it still feel unreachable for so many people? The answer is not in the field itself, nor in the mechanics of collapse. The real barrier is identity. Who you believe yourself to be determines which reality you collapse, no matter how much you visualize, hope, or affirm otherwise. This is why you can practice techniques for years and still feel stuck in the same place. Because beneath the surface, your identity is broadcasting the opposite signal. Your subconscious is saying something completely different than your conscious desires. Neville Goddard's timeless teaching illuminates this with piercing clarity. He said, "You do not manifest what you want. You manifest who you are." If you identify as someone who's struggling, then no matter how many affirmations you repeat, the field will collapse the reality of struggle. If you identify as someone who's unlucky in love, your nervous system will filter every interaction to confirm that belief. Every single one. Identity is the anchor of collapse. You may wish for something different. You may desperately want something better. But unless you embody a new self, collapse defaults to the old every time. Neuroscience provides the biological evidence for this. Every belief you hold is etched into neural circuits that fire automatically. They shape your perception of reality without you even realizing it. These circuits are efficient. They conserve energy by filtering out experiences that contradict your expectations. If your brain believes money is scarce, it literally suppresses opportunities that prove otherwise. You will overlook them, dismiss them, sabotage them unconsciously. The collapse will reinforce scarcity because that's the identity your biology knows. That's the program that's been running. This is not the universe withholding from you. It's your nervous system collapsing coherence with what you already embody. Here's the pattern interrupt. The greatest barrier to shifting is not the complexity of the process. It's your addiction to the old self. We mistake familiarity for truth. Even suffering feels safe if it's known, if it's predictable, if it's what we've always experienced. The brain clings to old emotional states: fear, worry, self-doubt, anxiety, because they're familiar signals. And each time you replay them, you collapse the same version of reality again. You reinforce the neural pathway. You strengthen the circuit. The illusion is not that shifting is difficult. The illusion is that you are the person you've always been. Once that illusion dissolves, shifting becomes inevitable. Identity is not static. It's programmable. Just as neurons wire together through repetition, they can also rewire. Belief systems can be unlearned. Emotional addictions can be broken. The key is to stop negotiating with the old self and begin embodying the new one, even before there's visible evidence. This is why Neville urged his students to live in the end, to embody the state of the wish fulfilled as though it were already true, not to fake it, but to become it. Dr. Joe Dispenza explains the same principle scientifically. When you combine clear intention with elevated emotion, your body begins to believe the future has already arrived. And once your biology accepts that new identity, collapse follows automatically. The field responds to what you are, not what you want. But here's the incomplete puzzle. If it's so simple, why doesn't everyone do it? Because identity feels invisible. We believe our thoughts are who we are. Our emotions are natural. Our stories are fixed truths about ourselves. We rarely question them. We just assume they're real. And yet identity is nothing more than a collection of repeated states. Change the state, and you change the identity. Change the identity, and you collapse a new reality. The problem is not that it's impossible. The problem is that most people never step far enough outside of themselves to see that their truth is only a habit. Let's bring this closer with an example. Imagine two people standing at the edge of the same opportunity. One believes deep down, I am someone who always fails. The other believes, I am someone who adapts and thrives. Both face identical external conditions. But their internal signals collapse entirely different outcomes. The first person sees obstacles everywhere. They confirm failure before they even begin. The second person sees possibilities. They create progress because that's who they are. Identity determined the collapse, not effort, not luck, not circumstance. Which means the barrier is never the field. It's always the self you embody. Here's the curiosity loop to hold open. What if the version of you who already has what you desire is not far away in some distant future? What if they're already alive within you right now, waiting to be chosen? What if shifting realities is not about becoming someone new, but about stopping the rehearsal of the old? That question is not meant to be answered immediately. It's meant to echo in you, to pull you deeper into the next step. Because once you see that identity is flexible, that it's just a pattern you've been repeating, shifting stops being complicated, it becomes the most natural thing in the world. By now, the mystery has been stripped away. Quantum shifting is not reserved for the gifted or the chosen few, and it's not an impossible feat requiring years of discipline. It's the natural collapse of probability into form, guided by the identity you embody moment to moment. Which means that if you want to shift deliberately, you don't need grand rituals or secret codes passed down through ancient lineages. You need simple, consistent practices that align your thoughts, emotions, and body into coherence. Simplicity is not weakness. Simplicity is power, because it removes resistance and stabilizes the signal you send into the field. The first practice is the breath. It sounds almost too ordinary, too basic, but ordinary is exactly where the extraordinary hides. Research shows that when you slow your breathing, extending your exhale longer than your inhale, the heart enters coherence. That coherence synchronizes with your brain waves. It quiets the noise of stress. It aligns the nervous system. In those moments, your body is no longer signaling fear or lack. It's broadcasting harmony, and harmony is the language the field understands perfectly. If you practice nothing else but 5 minutes of coherent breathing every day, you would begin to notice shifts in how reality responds to you. The practice is simple, but its effects ripple into everything. The second practice is embodied imagination. Too many people approach visualization like wishful thinking, looking at their desire as though it's far away in the distance, as though it's separate from them. But to collapse a reality, you must imagine from within it, not looking at it, but living inside it. Close your eyes and place yourself in the middle of the scene. Feel the textures around you. Hear the sounds. Taste the air. Let your body rehearse the emotions of already being there, already living it, already experiencing it as your present reality. Neuroscience proves that the brain cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a lived one. The same circuits fire. The same hormones are released. The same neural pathways get reinforced. Each time you imagine in this way, you teach your nervous system that the new reality is already familiar, and the field responds by collapsing probabilities to match what feels familiar to your biology. The third practice is sleep. The minutes before you drift off at night are the most potent gateway into your subconscious mind. In that state, your brain shifts into slower theta waves, and the door between conscious intention and unconscious programming swings wide open. If you fall asleep replaying fears and disappointments, you instruct your subconscious to reinforce them all night long. For 8 hours, your system marinates in that frequency. But if you fall asleep in gratitude, rehearsing the emotions of your desired reality, your subconscious carries that vibration through hours of rest. It imprints it deeper than any waking practice ever could. Night after night, you're either collapsing your past or collapsing your future, depending on what you carry into sleep. The fourth practice is micro-habits. Collapse is not only about inner states, it's also about outer reinforcement. Every small action that reflects the identity you want strengthens coherence. If you're collapsing into health, choose a single daily action that reflects health. If you're collapsing into abundance, make one decision each day as though abundance is already yours. These actions may seem insignificant, almost trivial, but the nervous system reads them as evidence. They reinforce the story you're embodying. And the more evidence your biology accepts, the stronger the collapse becomes. Before we go deeper, I want to invite you into something real. If you've been feeling like this makes sense, if a part of you is realizing your own power right now, hit subscribe and click the bell icon next to it. Also, join our Manifestation Club on gogetter.au. Get inspired by reading manifestation stories and share your story to inspire others. This isn't just a channel, this is a frequency. If you felt a nudge while watching, you're already tuned in. But here's the incomplete puzzle. If these practices are so simple, why do most people abandon them? The answer is hidden in their very simplicity. People expect something complicated, something dramatic, something that feels hard enough to prove they're doing real work. They dismiss breathing, imagination, or gratitude as too easy, forgetting that reality itself operates on simplicity. Collapse is not about adding more and more techniques. It's about removing contradiction. The practices are designed to clear static, to stabilize coherence. And once coherence is achieved, the shift unfolds naturally. The difficulty was never in the mechanics. It was in believing that only struggle could produce results. Here's the pattern interrupt that flips everything. What if ease itself is the proof you're on the right path? What if the shift is not meant to feel like climbing a mountain, but like remembering how to walk? This flips the narrative we've been taught our entire lives, that pain and effort prove progress. In the quantum field, the opposite is true. The easier it feels, the closer you are to coherence. Ease is not weakness. Ease is alignment. In the comments, drop one thing you truly want to manifest. And most importantly, why is it important to you? Let this be a small but profound declaration. A signal to the universe you send not just into this space, but into the quantum field. Drop it in the comments. I'm giving away 2 one-on-one free sessions to help you bring it to life. Be honest. Be you. Spiritual traditions echo this truth across centuries. The Tao speaks of Wu Wei, effortless action in harmony with the flow of the universe. Mystics describe the path of least resistance as the path of greatest power. Even modern science affirms that systems in coherence require less energy to produce greater effects. The message is the same across time and culture. Ease is not an accident. It's the natural consequence of alignment. So hold this open loop in your mind. If quantum shifting is easier than you think, what would happen if you finally stopped expecting it to be hard? What realities would collapse into your life if you allowed simplicity to be your strategy? The answer is waiting in the silence, ready to be chosen. When you begin to allow shifting to be simple, something remarkable happens. The effects extend far beyond the quiet practices you perform in private. Like waves traveling outward from a single drop in still water, your inner state ripples into the field. It reorganizes circumstances, relationships, opportunities. What began as ease within you becomes visible change all around you. This is the ripple of effortless shifts, the silent expansion of coherence into the fabric of reality itself. Most people underestimate how far these ripples reach. They imagine that a change in thought or feeling stays trapped inside their own mind, locked in their own skull. But physics tells a different story. Every coherent state you embody radiates through your electromagnetic field, and that field extends several feet beyond your physical body. Instruments can measure it, other nervous systems can sense it unconsciously, and the quantum field, which connects all probability, responds to it. When you stabilize coherence, you're not just shifting your own experience, you're influencing the probabilities available to everyone and everything connected to you. This is why environments change when you change. A person radiating fear walks into a room and tension rises. People feel it without knowing why. A person radiating calm enters the same room and people breathe easier. Their shoulders drop. Their guard lowers. These are micro ripples of state, invisible but contagious. Now imagine what happens when you sustain the vibration of your desired reality, not for minutes, but for days, weeks, months. The ripple strengthens into a wave. That wave begins bending events into alignment, drawing in synchronicities that seem miraculous to outsiders, but are simply physics unfolding naturally. Here's the incomplete puzzle. If the ripple is so powerful, why do people still believe their efforts don't matter? Because the first ripples are invisible. Just like a seed sprouting roots beneath the soil, the field reorganizes in silence before evidence appears. In those early days, doubt creeps in. People abandon the practice, convinced nothing is working, when in truth everything is already shifting. The wave is still traveling outward. The evidence just hasn't reached the visible shore yet. If you could see how much was already moving in the unseen, you would never doubt again. Consider the stories we call miracles. A person practices gratitude quietly, without telling anyone, and within months, financial opportunities suddenly appear out of nowhere. Another falls asleep each night embodying love, and relationships heal without confrontation, without force, without drama. From the outside, it looks like chance, random luck, but from the inside, it's the ripple of effortless shifts. What appeared sudden was only the moment the invisible wave reached the visible world. Every transformation that seems overnight is in truth the culmination of ripples that began long before anyone noticed. Neuroscience confirms this ripple effect in the brain as well. Mirror neurons fire both when we act and when we observe others acting. This means that your state influences not only your own perception, but also the people around you. When you embody calm, others feel calm. When you embody abundance, others unconsciously expand their sense of possibility. You don't need to preach. You don't need to persuade. The ripple does the work. Identity broadcasts louder than words. Here's the pattern interrupt you must remember. Effortless shifts do not mean passive shifts. Ease is not the absence of influence. Ease is the amplification of influence. The less resistance you hold, the clearer your signal becomes. And the clearer your signal, the more undeniable the ripple becomes. Effortless shifts are not weaker, they're stronger, because they conserve energy for coherence instead of wasting it on contradiction and internal conflict. Spiritual traditions have always known this. The Tao speaks of harmony spreading like water, shaping landscapes without force. Mystics describe the aura of a transformed person as a fragrance others cannot ignore. Even modern psychology observes that presence itself, silent, coherent presence, has more impact than speeches or arguments. The ripple of effortless shifts is universal. It doesn't require recognition to be real. It only requires consistency. And here's the curiosity loop that carries us forward. If small, silent practices ripple outward into massive external change, what happens when you make effortless coherence your default way of being? What happens when you stop collapsing by accident and begin collapsing deliberately, again and again, until the ripple becomes a tidal wave? The answer is not far away. It's already moving through the field, waiting for you to notice how much has changed because you allowed it to be easy. The greatest illusion of all is that quantum shifting is reserved for the few, that only mystics, saints, or visionaries have access to it. But by now, you've seen the truth. Shifting is not magic, and it's not out of reach. It's the natural process of collapse, the constant selection of probabilities through the state you embody moment by moment. The only difference between those who shift deliberately and those who don't is awareness. Once you know that collapse is always happening, the question is no longer if you can shift. The question becomes how consciously you will do it. Living the ease of quantum shifting means releasing the obsession with effort. It means no longer chasing reality as if it's separate from you, as if it's something out there that you have to hunt down. It means recognizing that the version of life you desire already exists in superposition, and your only task is to embody the self for whom that life is already true. This is not struggle. This is surrender. And surrender is easier than we've been taught to believe. Science and spirituality converge here beautifully. Physics shows that collapse is instantaneous. A wave doesn't strain into becoming a particle. It doesn't agonize. It simply becomes when the conditions are met. Neuroscience shows that the brain rewires quickly when emotion and repetition align, pruning away the old circuits, reinforcing the new. Spirituality reminds us that faith, assumption, and surrender have always been the real engines of transformation. Put them together and you see it clearly. Collapse is not effortful. Collapse is easeful. This is why struggle has always been the wrong compass. If you're pushing harder and harder, forcing reality to bend to your will, you're confirming separation. You're telling the field, I am not there yet. I don't have it. I'm still trying to get it. And the field responds accordingly. But when you embody ease, when you breathe into coherence, imagine from within, sleep in gratitude, act in micro habits of alignment, you stop asking for the shift, and you start living as if it has already occurred. That's the moment collapse stabilizes. That's when reality cannot resist you, because you're no longer waiting for it. You are it. But here's the paradox. Ease is not passivity. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means removing resistance so that your actions flow naturally from who you are. When identity changes, behavior changes effortlessly. The non-smoker doesn't fight cigarettes every day. The athlete doesn't argue with training. The creator doesn't struggle to create. They simply embody their state, and the collapse follows. Living the ease of shifting means becoming the version of yourself for whom the desired reality is normal, not extraordinary, not miraculous, just normal. It means normalizing the miraculous until it becomes inevitable. Consider what happens when you carry this perspective into daily life. The ripple grows stronger. Relationships respond without confrontation. Finances reorganize without panic. Health restores without endless fear. You'll still take action, but it will no longer feel like grinding. It will feel like flow, like water moving downhill. Others may call it luck. You'll know its coherence embodied until the field had no choice but to match it. Here's the curiosity loop to leave open in your mind. If shifting is this natural, this easeful, then what has your belief in difficulty cost you? How many realities have been left unchosen because you thought the door was locked, when all along it was waiting for you to open it gently? And more importantly, what will your life look like when you stop demanding effort as proof and begin trusting ease as the path? That question is not rhetorical. It's the invitation you carry forward from this moment on. And if you feel ready to take this deeper, to anchor the ease of shifting into a lived practice rather than just an inspiring idea, there's a next step available to you. I created a guide called Awaken Your Quantum Power, designed to take everything we've explored here and ground it into daily application. Alongside it, you'll find a practical companion that walks you through exercises, rituals, and frameworks to embody collapse with simplicity and consistency. The link is in the pinned comment. Treat it as the continuation of this journey, not as more information to consume, but as a set of tools to help you live what you now understand. Make sure you share this video with your loved ones. You might just be a blessing in disguise for them. For you, it may be just sharing, but for someone in need, it may mean everything. And their gratitude will increase the positivity flowing back to you. Be the friend who shares breakthroughs, not just memes. Share this with someone who's stuck. Real ones share value. Pass this on if you're that kind of human. Shifting isn't magic, and it's easier than you think, because in the end, the most powerful shifts are not loud. They don't demand struggle. They arrive quietly, naturally, inevitably. When you decide that the ease of becoming is enough,